this was an interesting note about it seems like there is never just any calm. You know, you went through the conference realignment and much, much more. Leave that up for a second, Garrett, if you don't mind, from Ross Dellinger from Yahoo, and we'll have Dan Wetzel today at 3:30. It's exhausting for the fans to deal with all of these changes every offseason, and it sucks to see my alma mater on the wrong side of it. Can't believe I'm saying it, but I'm beginning to like the NFL more now. I don't believe that last part of it. College football fan's a college football fan. But the story is that the Big Ten and the SEC have gained yet momentum again. It's like whenever they want to, and this is their time, they can have their discussions about the SEC and the Big Ten having 4 automatic qualifiers among what would be a 14-team, maybe 16-team college football championship playoff. The SEC then would maybe, it appears, one of the things they would do is, okay, we'll play 9 conference games. Right now they play 8. Ross Bjork, who's at Ohio State, was at A&M, said now that he's been a part of the Big Ten, the 9 games, he likes it. And then, of course, they would have their scheduling of some sort alliance. Some of this is something we already knew, but it appears as if, yet again, that the Big Ten and SEC are ready now to move forward, and basically you don't have to have unanimous approval from everybody else. And so this is just a matter of time, and there's meetings over the next week or 2 or month when it comes to that.
Whatever anybody who's not Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey can do to make sure there's not 4 AQs per those leagues, they need to do. And in Ross's article, it mentions that some of the higher-ups at ESPN aren't crazy about that because they don't want to alienate half the country. That's the direct quote. You're going to alienate half the country if you do that. And we are in a sad state of affairs in college athletics when 2 conferences, one of which got their way and got 4 teams in, one of them didn't get 4 teams in, threw a bitch fit about it for a month, and for now 2 months now, that they didn't get in. So this proposal that they had out there, now that they didn't get their way, they're deciding to go full steam ahead to make sure that they're the 2 conferences to get 4 teams in, even if they don't deserve to have 4 teams in each. In most years, they probably will. But this is not.
It's fine. You probably will, but you shouldn't just say.
No, you got to earn it.
Yeah.
That's what sports is.
You know how many people are guaranteed to make the playoffs in the NFC East?
0.
No,
just the champion.
1, the conference
champion.
Yeah.
Just the champion.
The division champion.
But yeah, so like just the division champion. So just, I mean, cut it out with this. We're better and it's harder in our league. Stop it. That is propaganda. It is absolute propaganda. And you didn't get your way, Greg Sankey. So now you're going full steam ahead, trying to ruin college football. And if it is 8 teams automatically, and even with the ones who are, it's an invitational. If you're guaranteed AQs beyond your conference champion, it is not a playoff, it's an invitational, and it cheapens the regular season in a way that I can't even begin to describe and is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by it. These types of moves have been ongoing for 2-3 years in a row now. I mean, we've seen Greg Sankey, especially outwardly, make mention of what the SEC desires, what they want, and they've been pretty clear in their desires to gobble up as many playoff spots and as much of the money as possible without even having to actually lift a finger in order to do it. And I guess they technically have, because some of the models being used to justify the 4 teams per those 2 leagues, and then possibly 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, is based on like the previous decade. And so they've technically gone about earning that with the national championship wins and big marquee wins and TV ratings and all of that. But, I mean, now at this point, I just don't know if there's any stopping them from just doing whatever they want to do. And maybe we crossed that point long ago where – yeah, they were obviously the most popular leagues based on the schools they had. That became only cemented when you added all of the top schools that were out there at the time and available in Oklahoma and Texas and in Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA. And, I mean, even the leftovers that haven't been picked apart are of constant mention, even though the ACC's kind of settled down a little bit in terms of it not feeling like it's some imminent thing going on. So they've gobbled up real estate. They've gobbled up the biggest brands. Now they use those brands in these calculations from the past decade. So anything that you actually did accomplish as the Big 12 from Oklahoma and Texas is automatically counted as the SEC now. Same thing for Oregon and Washington, counting towards the Big 10 and so on. So they got some of the best from the other leagues. They've added that, and now they're using that to justify what they already had as far as an advantage goes, and now it's doubled their advantage, really, and they are basically in lockstep with the TV networks. We know the SEC-ESPN relationship is airtight, and Fox and the Big Ten, although the Big Ten's multiple networks. And so, yeah, their fingerprints are all over this entire thing. All these parties that we've been talking about for 2 years, the Big Ten and the SEC and their subsequent TV networks, and they're the ones pulling the strings. And as much as Brett Yormark, as he says he will come armed with data to these meetings, and as much as, I'm sure the ACC will push back as much as they possibly can. Like, I just don't know what you're going to do about it. You threaten a break, and what do they immediately do? Well, fine, go ahead. And you don't really have a feasible option in front of you. So if you don't threaten the break, then what do? They threaten the break. So they've been, holding this blackmail card over them, or maybe blackmail is not the right word, but they've been holding this card over the Big 12 and the ACC for a while now of do what we say or else we leave. And I don't know how feasible that is, how quickly that could even happen, especially when you start taking into consideration things like basketball. But
if you're looking for a wheeled cooler, this is the Arctic 52-quart ultralight wheeled cooler. I hauled it on a deck, I hauled it downstairs, upstairs, grass, gravel, sandy road, mud puddles, the whole bit. And I gotta say, it is pretty darn tough. I really do like the wheels and the tow handle. It's easy to hold on to, even when full. It made it 6 full days with ice present, still keeping cool enough temperatures to keep drinks cold. This is a great cooler. And if you're looking for a new wheeled cooler that tows really nicely, this is a great option.
they're flexing all their muscle. Nobody's really doing anything about it because I don't know there's really anything anybody can do about it. And so if you're a fan of those leagues, I'm sure you feel like, you're politician one or whatever, and you're not really too worried about the grand scheme of things. But if you're not a fan of those two leagues, or even if you are and you just are more a fan of college football than a ripoff of the NFL, then you're probably not too happy about it. But again, I don't know what there is to do about it. And so now we're reaching these stages where every single thing they've wanted to accomplish has been accomplished. Now they're going to cross schedule with each other, so that takes another week off the slate that might be an Oklahoma State playing an Auburn or somebody like that. And I don't know where it ends. I mean, I don't know how much more money they can squeeze out of this thing, but they're damn sure trying to squeeze every cent out of it and make sure it's theirs and theirs alone, and screw the rest is basically the messaging we've gotten over these last couple years.
And look, how much can you shove into something like expanding the playoff, expanding the NCAA tournament, which is part of this kind of conversation, which got loudly booed at Bama when Pete Thamel reported it the other day, and would be booed anywhere because they've got it good. They are trying to cram too much into this instead of improving what they have. How do you make the games better that you have? How do you do this? How do you enhance the other conferences so that you do feel like you have more of a level playing field? How do you do all those things as opposed to just shove so much of one thing down the viewing public's throat that it starts to suck? Because if you guarantee 4 teams in the SEC and Big Ten, you're going to have more years than not where it sucks because a couple of those teams probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and that means 8 of 14 or 8 of 16, whatever it might be, and then you're going to end up having some rematches, which can happen anyway because of the college football playoff. Even if it was for a national championship, a conference championship game could end up being a championship game when it was even 4.
This is very much a situation where it's reminiscent of a lot of things, but it's one of those deals where the last 2 years people have been kind of sounding the alarm bells of like, I don't think this is the best thing for everybody, and I don't know if this is the best thing for the greater game, and I don't know. No, it's cool. We love college football, says Greg Sankey. We're all about college football, and then the moment he has to be just the SEC commissioner, he's the SEC commissioner. But when he's questioned on that, he's all of a sudden Mr. America College Football, and I don't mean to just put a spotlight on him. It's not all him. He's doing what he's got to do for his league. But there's been plenty of people going like, I don't know if this is the best, and they're just storming right on through. They don't care. They don't care if you or I or Paul or whoever thinks this is better enough for college football, they'll cite immediately the rankings this year were the best. The interest level this year is the highest it's ever been. And to some extent, I think that's true. I think if you unpacked it on every level, maybe that's not always the case. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the best for the game, but the warning signs have been here for at least 2 years that this is what they were going to attempt to do, was take over as much as they possibly could when it comes to territory, TV slots, power, and authority. And they've seemingly done a good chunk of that over these last couple of years with the realignment moves made, the TV deal signed, and now total control of the entire, college football playoff system. I mean, it's their world. They're the ones creating and doing all of the work now for all intents and purposes. How long the committee is for this world, I don't know. Because they're really not the ones calling the shots, it feels like, moving forward. So, yeah, I mean, this was all foreshadowed. In some cases, this was outright said, with a nod and a wink maybe sometimes. But, yeah, it's their world, and everybody's just kind of living in it, and I don't know if there's anything that anybody can do about it.
I understand that what Petitti and Sankey actually at the end of this article was not quoted. It's a quote from him from earlier back when some of this was being discussed. My whole thing is that if you're so good and you have all of the trophies and a lot of the championships, all of the last couple of years, the Big Ten does, I don't understand why you need automatic qualifiers. I understand why you would want them, but I don't understand why if you are the John Holmes of college football, why do you have to be proven that you are?
You just answered your question, though.
Yeah, no, I get it, but here's the thing. Now, I've seen Paxton. It's a super league. ESPN, the quote, Paul, that you mentioned, is that they're not so sure, at least they say that maybe they're not so sure this would be in their best interest. But I don't know if ESPN, even though we say they have a lot to do with how these matchups and who makes it or whatever, and I'm sure they do, ESPN's a little trepidation about moving forward if you eliminate a third or more of the country.
I would think they're the only ones who could legitimately stop it. I think they would be the only ones that could legitimately stop it. And
what also doesn't make sense is that some of their partners that they have relationships with in television and agreements with their network are some of the same teams in which if they let this move forward, they're basically hurting them.
Yeah, no, they are, and that's bad. It's bad for business all the way around. And, I remember hearing Mark Cuban years ago. It was the first time I'd ever heard this slogan, and maybe I was naive at the time, but he said, and he was talking about how he thought the NFL was getting too big for its britches, which clearly hasn't happened yet. But he said pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And right now, college football is turning into a big old hog because they're just – they don't care about the entire viewing populace. They don't care about the fans. And the thing that's different about college football and the NFL is it's not fair to really compare the two in that probably the majority of college football fans, although it might be a thinner margin than you would think, but I would think more than 50% of college football fans have some skin in the game where they or their parent or whatever went to the university that they love. Only 1% of the population, them or their parent was an NFL player. Like, it's not that much. But in college football, you love the school that you love mostly because you either went there or your dad went there or your mom went there or your grandpa went there. You have some skin in the game. In the NFL, I like the Cowboys, but it's because my dad liked the Cowboys, but I'm not a Dallas Cowboy. I was never once. They never called me. They never drafted me. I never got a free agent look. None of that stuff. In college, I love Florida State because I was a Florida State student.
But I love Nebraska because I was born there.
Yeah,
but I didn't go there.
Yeah, so you're in the other side of it. But again, you're also you and Craig as Nebraska and Oklahoma fans. You guys are fine. You guys are going to be in the your conferences are taken care of. But someone like me, someone like Emory, Andrew, that are Baylor grads, and FSU, we have to hope that we're the two best teams.
Well, FSU will be a part of it. And that's when people hear the Super League. Here's the thing. This is not really any breaking news. It's just that there are meetings coming up. For example, at the end of this month, what is today, the 17th, in 8 days, just over a week from now, the college football playoff leaders and those who make decisions are going to meet. And I don't know what they'll actually come out of that with, any kind of this is what we're going to do. I don't know about that. Here's my thing. I don't think anybody gets a freebie. I don't think you should get that. And that's in the way I feel sometimes, even outside of sports. But if you are good, go earn it. Go win your conference championship or be in the top 5 or 10, and then you will get an invitation to what is the chance to win a national title. Just be who you are. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really heavenly, ideal, positive way to look at things of the way they should be. Sorry to smash that for you. Here's reality. They don't care about that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many times we have to say it. They don't care about Joe college football fan that roots for Baylor. They don't care. You don't bring enough of an audience for them to care. I think there's a level that ESPN has to care, but I first of all, I think it's weird when we try to make them out to be like some boogeyman pulling all of these strings. I think that they have their wants and their desires. I also think they have contracts with other leagues, and does that mean they're going to prop them up the same way they do others? No, because those others make them, or one in particular makes them a lot more money. So they're always going to favor them. They have such a large investment in them. They're just automatically going to be more biased because they've had so much success, so much money, so many eyeballs pour in through the SEC. That's their baby, right? Yeah, I think they would prefer them in any scenario. I also think they do have some level of care because they've got to fill out their network during Saturdays in the fall to some extent, although we've seen how more and more is getting shifted off that to streaming platforms and whatnot. So I don't know what ESPN's long-term goal is here. I don't know if they're the big bad boogeyman. They trip over themselves a lot to be the big bad boogeyman, quite frankly. I think maybe they're being used as that example when really we should be looking directly at Greg Sankey or directly at the Big Ten, and Tony Petitti, as opposed to this 4-letter network that's been, I mean, half a mess for the last decade, quite honestly, in basically everything they've done. So I don't know that I'm giving them full credit for organizing this. But yeah, the power brokers they're working alongside could certainly be the ones. And I think Greg Sankey, Mr., let me quote Art of War, and let me, quote this and that, Mr. Philosophical and always kind of tinkering and always sort of, playing chess in the background. I think he's certainly been, whittling away at ideas like this for a while. But I'm just somebody who's not going to ever be foolish enough to think that everybody's going to go, you know what? This isn't the right thing to do. We need to grant more access. Sure, it'll mean less money for us, and sure, it'll mean less guaranteed playoff spots, but we're going to do the right thing for middle America. Come on. They're not thinking that way at all. They don't give a damn about Iowa State. They don't give a damn if Boston College never makes the college football playoff. They care about money, TV, ratings, and all that comes with that, and these two leagues provide the majority of that. So they're the ones in control. They're the ones pulling the strings. Who's the big, bad puppet master above it all? I think the commissioners are ultimately. But, yeah, they're working alongside the networks because the networks have a mutual relationship where they all make big money and big projects together. And that's not going to change. If anything, as we're seeing, it's only going to keep rolling further downhill. But I do think when I saw this story today, it reminded me of all of the talk about the NBA over the weekend, and I've made mentions of this plenty of times over like the last year or so, just goofing on like all of the elaborate courts that they use and just these things they're trying to do to make it interesting. It almost feels like that with the constant tinkering of college football, of like everything's just being tinkered. Now, the NBA is doing that out of desperation because they're trying to find ways to make people care outside of the playoffs. And it's not really working all that effectively, but they're still getting big TV deals. College football is not really needing to do that. It's just happening because there's two entities that can do that, and so they're doing it because they can and because they can grab power and all that comes with it. And so we've seen the warning signs, we've heard the warning signs, and it's here, and they're the ones that are in control. And like I said a few moments ago, I don't know how you really stop it. And for college football fans in general that aren't Mr. Alabama or Mr. South Carolina or Mr. Michigan, I think the sport we love is still here and it's going to be around, but I can certainly understand if there's some people who become a bit disillusioned with a lot of it, especially during the offseason when there's constantly things like this going on that are the benefit for a couple and not the benefit for everybody.
There's a part here, and by the way, Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports, will join us here in about 10 minutes. The 14-team model, 4-4-2-2, 1+1, which is Notre Dame, aligns mostly with conference strength over the last 11 years. Since the 2014 playoff, which is the first year they started the playoff, the SEC's had 52 teams. Inside of the top 14 of the college football rankings, that doesn't mean they've had 52 teams get in the playoff. But the Big 12 has 23, the Big 10, 51. Then I saw this note. The data, considering conference realignment shifts, Oklahoma is counted towards the SEC figures. They've been in that league for not even a full year. And so I'm like, so the Big 12 gets that pulled away from them. They weren't a part of the SEC, and Utah was not a part of the Big 12, so the Big 12 should not get Utah.
But they do, though.
But they do. So that's a little bit funny math.
But that's flawed data on all counts.
Yeah.
Yes,
if you're going to use that. They're using
why do you use the last 11 years?
Yeah.
Like,
well, because 2014 was the first.
Okay. Well, that makes sense
playoff.
then. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
at least that makes sense.
But the data that they need to also be looking at over that is, they're just not fully expanding it out to where it's not pigeonholed into exactly what they want.
No, it's going to say what they want on the other side of it.
It's going to say what they want on the other side of it. Yeah. And the thing is that now we live in the internet age where every piece of information is available, but you can just find what you want, not what you need, what the real thing. There's so many lies out there, it's hard to sift to the truth. So you can manipulate the data the way that you want it, which they have. And again, the data, none of this matters. It's the fundamental nature of sports is last year doesn't matter. What do you think the Eagles are going to say on the first day of training camp? What are they going to say?
Yep.
You're like, hey, how are you going to build momentum? Last year doesn't matter. Yep. It's all a new day, blah, blah, blah. It's one of the tired sports cliches, and it's tired and it's a cliche because it's true. So last year doesn't matter. So why does 11 years ago matter?
Philadelphia winning the Super Bowl a week or so ago does not guarantee them anything during the 2025 season.
Just like nothing is guaranteed for Ohio State.
Yep, that's right.
Nothing is guaranteed for Ohio State.
Obviously, ask Michigan what happened with
nothing is guaranteed. Yeah. It's the new era. Michigan went from a national championship undefeated team that dominated throughout the year to a team that didn't even have a quarterback and barely made a bowl game.
Yep.
Now they had a nice push at the end of the year, but that's going to happen more often than not. Now, look, Florida State was either the extreme example, 13-0 to 2-10.
Yep.
Like, what are you talking about here?
That's my whole thing.
Like, so they have that. We're in a new era. 11 years ago, when there was no transfer portal and no NIL, matters, nothing. It's a minuscule assault of just nothing, a grain of salt.
Everything we say on the 25th, they're going to meet a lot of the leaders that are involved with the college football playoff. Commissioners, both Jim Phillips, the ACC, Brett Yormark, the Big 12, group of 5 leaders are saying that they will fight this as much as they can. Conundrum is not someone I agree with, or he with me, or a lot of you with him a lot, but he did make this comment. Those conferences outside of the Big Ten and the SEC had a chance to put their foot down in the last year. And they kind of, I don't know if they broke or they blinked or whatever, but they could have at least put up more of a fight. And if there's blood from it, okay. That's fine.
That was the conversation is like, how much do you push before – basically what they had the choice to do was keep pushing until the SEC or the Big Ten did what they ultimately were going to do, and they pull the rug out from everybody and they go do their own thing. I think you should have called them on that bluff.
I did too.
And so instead they go, well, maybe you'll get a couple of qualifiers. Look, you get 2. We get 4 automatically, and maybe an at-large.
And there's another thing. Yeah, that's a 4 minimum.
They're getting 4 apiece no matter what. So if it's 14, they're 8 of 14 automatically. If it's 16, they're half the field automatically. Based on since 2011 and whatever else junk that points towards whatever they're wanting to accomplish. Whatever it says, it's in their favor. We know that much. But yeah, hindsight being 2020, I think there were plenty of people saying it at the time as well to call the bluff. And I don't know if it's politics.
All 3 of us did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We absolutely did. And I don't know if it's politics. I don't know what it is. But, yeah, they had their chance. And I guess the fear of, well, what if they do leave was something that froze them into inaction because it was just too big of a risk to take. But I kind of was always of the thought, and I don't know if I ever expressed it this way, but I definitely have felt this way for quite a while of like, how do you not know they're just going to stab you in the back even if you agree to go along with them anyways? Because quite frankly, if you ask me what I think, and I don't think Greg Sankey's like Satan incarnate or anything like that, but I do think he's definitely one of the puppet masters. And I definitely don't believe that he has the best interest of Texas Tech in mind when he's making his decisions.
No.
Or Georgia Southern, or anybody that's not one of the teams that he's already brought on board.
Or should your Mark care about Georgia
No, and he
Tech?
shouldn't either. Yeah. I definitely do not believe Petitti or Sankey whatsoever in terms of realignment and them, cooling. I feel like the moment they can go and slit another throat, they will do that. And then go, oh, it's just best for college football. Look, more big matchups. Look over here. Don't, that kind of thing. So I don't trust those guys as far as I could throw them. And you probably never should have if you were the Big 12 or the ACC either. But you had a choice. You call them on their bluff, or you go along and you feel like, well, let's get what we can. We're still a part of the club. But the problem is they're going to, move to another clubhouse here pretty soon, and it's going to be smaller. Although the two rooms will be there's going to be two rooms, and the rooms will be gigantic, extravagant, and they'll be beautiful and laced out. But it was 4 rooms. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to be 2, and now you're going to be like, well, you get the hallway.
Yeah.
Like you get the hall. You can put a sleeping bag there. It's going to be great. Meanwhile, they got the fireplace going. They got the big screen TV. But you're a part of the club, though.
Hey,
you're inside. You could be outside. You could be freezing to death outside. So they've kind of brought them along of like, you're still with us, right? The Power Four is making all of the new legislation. The Power Four. And then when it comes to decisions like this, there's all of a sudden 2 of them.
Yeah, no, because the Power Four, do they care about the group of 5s?
No, and that's the thing. I don't think Brett Yormark cares about them.
Now they want to complain if they're not a part of the 2?
Right.
So it's kind of hypocritical.
It is hypocritical, and that's why I don't go all gung-ho and like conference pride till I die, Big 12 or bust. I like the Big 12. I'm somebody who doesn't necessarily have to root for the conference any longer, but does cover somebody, and I do root for it because I enjoy it. I enjoy its history. I enjoy the way it survived. I enjoy the teams in the league, but they probably should have called the bluff a time or 2 beforehand, and I guess they're just happy to be along for the ride, although at some point, you're riding on the back of the pickup truck. You're not inside the cab anymore.